everyone. Welcome to another edition of InMobi's Mobile Monday series. Today, we're very excited to be speaking with Avi from Verve Group. Avi, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for talking with us today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And so, Avi, in our industry, obviously, the biggest topic right now is Apple's app tracking transparency framework and what that's going to mean for advertising in iOS devices. So before we get into some of the specific topics, let's level set here. Can you give just a quick overview of what these changes entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So Apple's sort of been teasing it for a little while, but there are some forthcoming changes which have recently been announced as of this week to some changes that are going to be made around the ID for advertising, its availability, consumer choice, as well as the ability for publishers and advertisers to utilize that to engage in behavioral advertising in the manner that which they had been, right, for the last decade or so since the first iPhone. So those changes are going to have a bit of an effect in the industry, particularly in data premised advertising solutions. And so it's something that was we were all waiting for and sort of got the news this week about.
Yeah, and I know there's lots of changes affecting everyone working within the iOS in-app advertising ecosystem. And we're not going to dive into all of the changes and what's going to happen at every end of the ecosystem today. But one area that we did want to focus on is specifically for advertisers that focusing on branding and awareness campaign, those kind of top of funnel campaigns. And I know we've been seeing, without the ability to target users, what is in-app advertising going to look like for these advertisers? And one area that's been seeing some renewed interest is contextual targeting. So can you give us an overview of what that is and what does that look like in app?
Yeah, for sure. So contextual advertising is really the process of reaching an audience based more on the actual content or the subject matter that they're experiencing, as well as anything that's going on around them in the real world. So really, it's going to be focused more on the environment and the content, and not on the actual user's identity. The concept itself, it's not new, right? People have been doing contextual advertising for quite some time. If you think about from the publisher's perspective, a news publisher, right, very, very routinely and very frequently may separate their inventory into different sections, right? The proper news section, a sports section, a business and finance section, a weather section, right? All to enable the delivery of more relevant ads to the content on those sections. Similarly, gaming publishers have been doing this for quite some time, maybe putting consumers into cohorts for analytics, for user acquisition, for optimization purposes, right? Are you at the start of the level? Have you been playing for a while? So it's extending that sort of idea, maybe that cohort based segmentation, and using that to deliver relevant advertising to the user. So in this case, we're sort of describing it from the publisher's perspective, and that's historically how we've looked at it. And I think now it's going to become more and more relevant from the advertiser perspective. So contextual advertising, contextual signals, they're just one of several that Verve Group uses to deliver relevant advertising to create audiences that are not necessarily linked to a specific person and that don't rely on the IDFA or personal identifiers.
Yeah. Are you seeing renewed interest in contextual targeting, or has it always been common and popular with advertisers and publishers?
Yeah, I think for sure we're definitely seeing more interest now. Contextual advertising, it's always been of interest to buyers. I think getting the right message out against a relevant backdrop is always going to be important, right? But it is seeing renewed interest, right? We've got this backdrop here of the IDFA deprecation or effective deprecation, right? That's going to phase out this sort of individualized targeting approach across the industry. And so advertisers and publishers, for that matter, are both trying to be a step ahead. So we've definitely been fielding more inquiries and have been seeing a lot more general interest.
Yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned a few examples. Can you speak a little bit more of like which kinds of advertisers and publishers are really embracing contextual advertising, and what kind of results can an advertiser or publisher expect from it?
Yeah, great question. I would say it really spans the verticals. We're seeing it from a lot of different brands across CPG, across retail, across automotive, QSR, entertainment are all examples. Contextual advertising, it doesn't necessarily only need to extend to what's on the screen. It can also be extending to what the person is experiencing in the real world. And I think when you marry the two, generally you can see stronger results together.
And I think that component, in my understanding, is how contextual advertising differs in app or digitally, as opposed to, say, linear television or radio advertising or print advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. The in-app component allows you to reach audiences on a much more granular level than you could, let's say, on TV or radio. So it does allow for some increased addressability. If you're thinking about TV, radio, and print, you're sort of limited to broad demographics and age for the audience for the most part. You might not have the same ability to fine tune the message based on contextual signals. Of course, print is generated always in arrears, right? So things may change from the time that happens to when it goes live. Print, radio, and TV, they have a more passive audience as well. And I think within app, the engagement is going to be a little bit higher. And you've got a much more active audience. So, we've seen that translate into just greater effectiveness.
Sure, makes sense. And so can you maybe name some examples of advertisers or publishers that Verve Group is working with that are utilize contextual targeting to see great success?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give you a real example that we've seen. We've run some pretty successful campaigns where the creative might be the contextual element, right? So if different products are promoted, if it's rainy or if it's sunny, right? Similarly, based on the time of day and the temperature, right? So it might be a QSR, coffee shop, right? Where if it's really hot out, they might be promoting cold brew coffee, right? On a warm morning, or if it's exceptionally cold or snowy, right? Maybe a warm beverage. So contextual advertising is not just necessarily limited to are they reading an article about coffee, but how can I show a message that's going to resonate with that person based on the context and the scenario. But it also can extend to what's on the page itself. If somebody's on a recipe app and they're reading a recipe, thinking about what they're going to make for dinner, it's probably an opportunity. It's not going to be the best opportunity to serve them an ad for, I don't know, let's say like pet food, right? You might want to show an ingredient, that would be relevant to what they're reading, or something that they can think about for a different point in time. So those two examples were in the kind of food and beverage industry, but you can sort of extend that across different verticals, and we've seen a number of campaigns that will take either approach, right? What's going on with the user themselves, whether it's weather or time of day or location, or the actual content on the screen that they're engaging in at that moment in time.
Yeah, I can definitely see a lot of value in that kind of advertising. So one question I have, contextual targeting, it definitely is gaining some additional interest. Where do you see it going? How do you see contextual targeting evolving in app over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it's definitely getting renewed interest right now, right? With the forthcoming changes to IDFA. I think there's going to be sort of forced innovation in that space. And so I definitely think it's going to become more relevant, right? As an advertiser, you don't reduce your requirements for advertising effectiveness, right? Just because these changes are coming. So I think we will see more and more innovation take place there, more and more ways to deliver privacy friendly, privacy first solutions that are still data premised, but that respect the user's privacy, that take advantage of signals like the contextual signals that might be going on all around that person, to deliver something that's richly relevant to them, but that's still effective to the advertiser. So I definitely see the ad tech ecosystem as a whole leaning into this, and working to develop new and novel solutions that will extend the effectiveness of contextual advertising as a whole.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious, between Apple's changes and of course different privacy regulations that we've seen between GDPR and CCPA and Chrome phasing out third-party cookies, are there other types of targeting mechanisms that advertisers maybe are leaning towards or are using more frequently in addition to contextual targeting now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think each advertiser is probably going to have a slightly different approach. They may be extending different probabilistic models as opposed to the more deterministic models that are based on identity or the individual IDFA in the case of mobile. So I think we're gonna see that unfold in the coming weeks and months ahead, and over the course of the rest of this year. Which approaches different advertisers take, whether they are using some other kind of opted-in, first-party data to overlay with app data, or if they're going to rely on broader, more contextual signals. I think it's going to become more and more relevant and important to own the relationship, excuse me, with the publisher. So having an SDK on device may enable you to do some things that are otherwise not possible, still respecting the user's privacy. And there will be less one-to-one individual advertising, I think, but there will still be ways to deliver that relevance that everybody's looking for, right? Between the publisher, the advertiser, and the actual consumer.
Yeah, maybe more persona-based advertising as opposed to personal advertising.
Absolutely.
And one thing that we're starting to see some renewed interest around is what we're calling KPI-based campaigns, where an advertiser will run a campaign solely looking to meet a certain KPI, like video completion rate. Are
Sure.
you seeing renewed interest in this type of buying on your end?
I wouldn't say renewed interest. So, in my opinion, most successful activations, they're gonna result from well thought out, strategic, KPI-led campaigns. So we're not seeing too much of a change there, right? Everybody has some sort of, or they should have some sort of stated end goal for running a campaign, right? It's not just I just need to spend some money, right? So typically, we'll work with our partners to and our advertisers to structure those types of campaigns. If somebody's got a top of funnel goal, a bottom funnel goal, a return on ad spend goal, a purchase goal, whatever it is, right? I think it's structuring a campaign to help best achieve that. So I wouldn't say we've seen any kind of renewed interest in that, as much as that interest has been steady, and it's definitely been a focus of the solutions that we bring to market, right? Our goal is not just to deliver a campaign in full, but it's to achieve some results and set everybody up for success on the next campaign.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. KPIs have always been critical to any type of digital marketing that you do. So yeah, that's a very good point. Definitely thank you for correcting me there. So as we go forward in this brave new sort of post IDFA world, are there any sort of KPIs in particular that advertisers are really going to be honing in on?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think it's yet to be seen, and sort of to be determined. I mean, broadly speaking, there may be some loss in ability to do some of the more bottom funnel actions. App installs and things like that will still be viable, of course. But perhaps losing some common identifier for anybody who's anchoring measurement, let's say, against the IDFA, that may become more difficult. So, I think we may see KPIs that are reliant on IDFA shift a little bit. That there may just be different ways of orienting and structuring campaigns to achieve, the ultimate results. But tactically speaking, you may see a divergence away from using IDFA if it becomes scarce and not particularly reliable for, measuring lift or deriving, performance index, that kind of thing. So, it's all still unfolding. So I think we'll learn more, in the months ahead. But I would say, that the KPI mix may well shift for sure. Potentially more upper in the funnel.
Right. Maybe things like viewability and video completion rate as opposed to click-through rate, or like buying on like a cost per action type model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those KPIs will remain crucial to advertisers. Of course, ensuring that ads are seen, that consumers are engaging with them. Now more than ever, I think will be even more important for sure.
Yeah, and so as we talked about before, Apple's changes are really just kind of one of many that are happening, as it relates to privacy and transparency within digital advertising. In the future, what do you really see as kind of a privacy first style of advertising? What is that really going to look like for consumers, publishers, and advertisers?
Yeah, that is a great question too. I mean, I think we've seen more and more push right towards privacy first advertising. Of course, we're seeing Apple's deprecation of the IDFA, and Google is expected to follow Apple's path, in short order as well. So it's sort of been building to this, right? We've had GDPR in Europe, we've got CCPA in California, other states are rolling out more plans. This is definitely moving to the forefront of people's attention, and I think there will be different strategies in a post IDFA, post third-party cookie world that will continue to be launched in the industry that respect users' privacy, but again, still support publishers and their ability to put out content, that is ultimately free to users, right? I think advertising is what keeps, in many ways, the internet free for everybody to enjoy, and enables great content to exist, right? And so, I think there will be further innovation that takes place there. It will just need to be modified slightly to rely less on these individual identifiers and sort of more broadly. But I think we've just started to scratch the surface there. Advertising can be just as effective in that format, and I know there are a lot of very smart people in the industry working on those kinds of solutions, including us. So looking forward to seeing what that holds.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that it's not an either or, that we can reach a solution where end users can still get free content, and the ads that they are exposed to are relevant and interesting and make sense for them. Publishers can continue to offer free content while still being able to monetize, while advertisers can still, reach the right consumers. I think there's, as you mentioned, there's ways to do that meet everyone's needs in a privacy compliant manner.
For sure. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Avi, thank you for joining us today. It's been great chatting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Had a great time.